Welcome everyone to another installment of LISI's News, Views, and To-Dos, where we talk to legal industry professionals about what is going on in their world, how they see our industry changing and their opinions on those changes, and lastly, their advice for our audience. Today, I'm excited to talk to Laura Toledo, the Marketing and Communications Manager at Nyland, Johnson & Lewis, and the 2021 LMA Midwest Region President. Thanks for being on, Laura.
Thanks for having me, Taryn.
Laura and I know each other from LMA Midwest Region, as I know most of my legal marketing contacts. I think one way or another, there's always a story about how we served together or we ran into each other at a conference, and it just goes from there. So I'm excited to finally have Laura on because I feel like most of the time that I've been serving on the LMA Midwest, even when we were LMA Midwest chapter, before we were LMA Midwest region, I've served with Laura in some capacity. And I'm very excited that she is serving as the LMA Midwest president this year. And I think that the region is very fortunate to have you as you're going through all of these changes with COVID and the changing of the structure that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's been kind of a ride this year. But I mean, essentially, that's my big news is I get to be president this year of the Midwest, which, as Taryn knows, I've kind of been on that path for a while. It's an honor to be here, but also it's what I've loved to do, what I've strived to do, and to finally get to be here in this time and to be able to sort of use that infectious personality to pick people up, it's been good. And I also think that at this stage of my career, right, I'm sort of into the leadership category now. So I don't like to call myself a leader, but right, you get to that point in your life where you're finally like, you feel comfortable in your skin, you feel confident in your ability, and you have that drive to make things better for people, at least the people that you're working with. So that's, I'm really excited that is sort of all clicking into place for me this year. So more on that later. I can't spill the beans yet, but.
Well, I would say you've been in a leadership role from the beginning, having worked with you for many years on a variety of different projects. Leadership isn't always a point in, your career or, after this or the title that you have. I mean, we've all said this. This is what is said at like every leadership conference you attend to. But having worked with you, like you always bring well, have we thought about this? Are we including these people? You bring all of the traits and all of the skills necessary to be a leader. So I find it ironic that you say that because I don't know how you would use any other term to describe what you bring to LMA and what you've brought from day one.
Well, I so appreciate that, especially coming from you, because you were, when we transitioned to regions, you were our first president when I was on the board. And, to watch people in action in that role is, I consider myself lucky. But it's also, leadership to me it's about other people, bringing out the best in other people or supporting them when they're down. And I live for that as a person. I'm an extrovert. I'm a people person. That's what excites me at the end of the day. People to, teach or learn or whatever. I don't know. I never feel above or below people. It's just, we're a team. I want to work with you. And that means everybody gets to be at their best. So.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons I said what I said is, for you, leadership is definitely about considering all of the people and all of their needs, not just being like, well, this is what I think is best, or this is what we've always done, or this is what's going to benefit me most. And we've all been in roles or positions in our lives where there are people who think, oh, like, I'm just going to do this. This is best for me. And I don't care about anything else. Or maybe they don't even think that. They just don't see the bigger picture and realize that what works for one person or one group might not work for everybody. And, sometimes we just need to advocate for those people or those groups. And I think you've always brought that to the role and to your position, but you do it in such a way that you don't alienate other people either. It's very much we're all on the same team. Let's work together. How can we all be happy?
And you maybe can't tell, but I am a minority. I mean, besides being a woman and, having felt somewhat marginalized in a small school where I had dark skin, I noticed those people. And some of us aren't as gregarious or extroverted. And so you need to be able to pick those people up and bring them with you, because we're not the same person. We don't have the same experiences. We don't react the same way. So to make sure that everybody's comfortable in that environment is quite the challenge. But, to see it now in my oldest daughter, who's 6 years old, is you definitely work on it. She's totally at the everything's my way stage. And oh God, as a parent, it's hard to parent, but that those skills that will eventually turn to where she's realizing what power that gives her and what power that gives her over other people, and what what that means for you as a person, right? It's, it's a skill that you can pick other people up with it. So you kind of have to learn responsibility for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But, compared to what my 6-year-old is, I've come a long way. So can only imagine what my mom thought as a child.
I think it's like a layering process too. Like at this stage of your life, you learn this, and then maybe in another stage of your life, you learn that, until finally you get to a point where you can like bring it together and be like, this is how I accomplish what I want to accomplish here. And in this situation, I need to use this other set of skills to accomplish that, versus being like, oh, I just figured it all out. Like, it's because you're learning all the different things at all the different times. How do I go forth and figure out when I need to advocate for myself, or when I need to advocate for somebody else, or when I need to, throw all that out the window and like start back, planning from scratch, or whatever that is.
I think that's what I've loved about the people that I've been able to work under, and those have been my true mentors, are the people who are not just willing to teach me something, but they're also willing to learn from me. And that ends up being a conversation versus well, you should do this and I should do this. But it's thinking outside of your own experience and realizing that that is something that you need to do.
Yes, 100%. I think we covered all the news, but I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Did you have any other news you wanted to share, or should we move on to?
No, not unless you want to talk about my third dog, but.
Well, I'm very excited that you have 3 dogs.
As many as we're allowed.
Our next question, I'm sure you have something to say on this, is what do you see changing in the legal industry, and what is the impact?
See, I was almost going to say the same answer for this on the next question, but I decided to parse them out a little bit. The obvious thing, right, is remote work. And I think along with remote work, it's realizing that there's no line between the personal and professional anymore. Not that there was, just, it's become more apparent, and to be able to take into consideration people's lifestyles, what they do with their kids, if they have kids, there's always that balance of, well, you had a choice to be a kid and I don't have a kid, so you should work most. Well, and part of being a good employee is being able to take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And that involves mental health and talking about those things. And we've had to go through that. So even in our firm, it's changed the way that we've worked with each other, and being cognizant of how people might be feeling, or the way in which they communicate via video. Sometimes that's hard. So to see firms do it right, and I do think that we're one of them. Obviously, there's always room to grow, but we knew early on that we needed to go virtual, and that meant our LAAs as well as our attorneys. And when we start to come back and look at what the workplace looks like now in 2021, we're going to have that same viewpoint, because we can't just force one category of people into doing this versus not the other one because you have this title, So I think that also means us looking at what our clients are doing, because they have a way better model than most law firms do. So, obviously that's been a huge disruption.
Oh, definitely. That was one of the very first things I said when they started sending people home, is like, this is going to change how people work and how people view remote work. And, I think which I think is a good thing. I think that conversation wasn't making much progress. And now, we've been forced to start having those conversations in a way that we haven't before. And that's a positive thing to come out of this. There's obviously a lot of negative things that have come out of it. But one of the other positive things that you touched on is I think it's forced us to humanize the people we work with. I mean, you and I are both people, and, we want to know, like, what are your kids up to? Or, you have 3 dogs, like, let's talk about that. And not everybody was, but now that we've had to do Zoom and we've all gone through this entire experience that's different than what any of us have ever faced in our lives, it has made us, confront some of the easier realities. Like, yes, I have kids and they like to walk in and sometimes whisper to me, but it picks it up on my microphone. Or, my dog jumped in my lap, and maybe someone you would have never had a conversation about, you're now having to have that conversation. But to your point, mental health has also been discussed in a way that it's never really been discussed in society or in the workplace over the last 12 months. And I know that you're a huge advocate for mental health awareness, and embracing that in our workplaces. And so my hope is that, aside from humanizing people, that larger conversation of we're all different and we all need things differently will stick with us as we transition into whatever is next for us, which who knows what that will be.
Well, I mean, I've had so many conversations with people who have never experienced this type of mental health crisis before. And even as somebody as experienced as I am, it's a different ball game. And one of my job duties at work is to do marketing plans with all of our associates. So I do a lot of business development training. And all last year I was like, are you seeing a therapist? How are you? And I had quite a few of them who have never had that experience just say, I didn't know there was somebody else out there. Mm-hmm. And to be able for them, to have them know that they can call somebody and that it's not going to affect their work. They're not going to get dinged for salary wise for talking to me about this. And I can give them things that I've learned through my own exploration of that. And I hope that continues, because as we look to what the workplace looks like, it's going to depend on preference, right? Where do we work best? Mm-hmm. And that's all about knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. And, is it going to be more, I know people who are complete introverts, and that is going to be going into the office every day is going to be draining, even though she's done that for the past 30 years. It's so much more about you going to work and getting the job done. And especially in legal, where your entire life is taken up by that job, there has to be a balance to that, right? Yeah. We're never going to achieve it, but it's nice to be able to have those conversations, to bring it out in the open and, kind of group talk about what that means for all of us. And that way I can see holistically across the board how our associates are feeling, and be able to take that, to the board and say, this is what's going on and here's what we should be doing. So, it's also an opportunity.
Well, yeah, to your point earlier, now that, you hit the point in your career when you're in leadership positions, it's hard when you're, 27, 28, just out of law school, trying to be the very best version of yourself that you can be in the eyes of the partners you're working for, to be like, oh, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. Or I don't want to be the only one to say something, because what if it's a sign of weakness? And then I don't get promoted, or I don't get the work, or whatever it is. That I think that's always this role, especially in smaller firms where your administration team is smaller and you end up wearing multiple hats, that sometimes you need to say, I'm having these conversations as someone that isn't deciding who makes partner. And this is a problem across the board. And as a firm, what can we do to address it? It has nothing to do with marketing.
No, it doesn't. But
it has to do with our firm and our culture. And that's important to all of us.
Right. But as somebody who has the position where I'm talking to all those people, I have that knowledge just for the sheer fact of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I want to right? This is the second question.
Yeah, so I was going to get to that. What should change, but is going to take longer than we'd like or longer than it should?
Now, see, this to me all ties together, but to me, it's about the structure of the practice of law itself, right? It's built on a system that is a natural deterrent for women and people of color, right? Your whole point is to bill. You can't do that if you have priorities at home, right? So it does essentially punish women way more than, the traditional man who has a spouse at home to watch the children.
Mm-hmm.
What I see is a new generation coming in that doesn't care as much about how much money they make.
Mm-hmm.
They care about if they're there for the important things, right? And it doesn't matter if they have kids or not. And it shouldn't matter if they have kids or not, or if they're a man or a woman. I've seen men leave law firms because either it was their wife's turn or spouse's turn, to build a business or whatever it is, or even just stay at home more with your kids. It has to change if you want to retain talent and if you want to retain diverse talent.
Yeah, I agree. And I know even my friends who, were the tail end of Gen X, like I had a lot of friends that went to law school and a lot of them that got out of either practicing law entirely or practicing law in law firms. And from day one, they got in and they're like, I don't ever want to be partner. I don't want to have to live, not even some of them still don't have children. They never wanted children. It was just I want to practice law. I don't want to do these other things that I'm being asked to do that is expected of me, because if I wanted to run a business, then I would have done that. And I don't want to put in the hours that I need to do that. And yeah, I think I could see it start changing among my friends. And to your point, I've seen men leave law firms as well for balance, but I've also had friends who were lawyers who were able to stay at their law firms and make partner and do the things they wanted to do because they did have a spouse at home who was doing those things.
Right. And the odd thing is, and I've talked to a lot of my associates about this, is that, right, once you're in that upper echelon, right, you still have all the brunt work. So you're really placing the burden on people who, like you said, are in their late 20s, early 30s. That's about the time, if you're going to have a family, that you have it. And so now you're overburdening these people with, right? Once you make a shareholder, it's great, you can pass the work down. Well, they can't. So you're putting the most burden on the people that already have it. And I don't think people want to make shareholder as much as they used to, because they don't see the value in it. And we're losing a lot of good people for it, which is a bummer. They're all going in-house.
Well, a lot of people want flexibility too, that prior to, 12 months ago, law firms weren't as willing to talk about that. Yes, of course it was happening. And yes, I've seen people make partner on, a part-time schedule or on maternity leave or whatever, but that's been a conversation that's been accelerated the last 12 months too. What does work look like? And are there flexible schedules and benefits that we can all enjoy that isn't, billing X all the time? Everything's bound to that number.
Right. But the question is, right, how do you measure success then? And I think that that's a really hard thing for law firms to get around. And it isn't, right. I'm obviously speaking from experience, but the entire thing is built on that particular platform, and that success means the more hours you bill, the more successful you are. Well, when you talk to somebody who is getting to that shareholder point, and I'm like, well, I see natural leadership skills, but it's hard to learn, but they don't feel like they can take on that because success means hours, and that's not who they want to be.
Or
it shouldn't matter.
Or, success means hours, and there's a business development component, which is something we deal with all the time. But I know we've discussed in our dealings with LMA, it takes having different skill sets of everyone on the team to all work together. And I bring something to the table and you bring something to the table. And sometimes what I bring to the table is what the group needs. And sometimes what you bring to the table is what the group needs. And working together to figure out what resources to pull in when. And I've seen it where there are attorneys who, like, we don't even want them out doing marketing and business development because that is definitely not their strength. And they know it and they don't like it. But you know what? Everyone is in their office, including senior partners, like discussing their cases. And like they're the probably most brilliant legal mind in the firm. And we don't always reward that because we're like, oh, well, you need to like bill hours and you need to develop business and you need to bring in, this much work and you need to mentor attorneys. And not everyone's built to do all of the things.
Well, they're not supposed to. And
they shouldn't.
That's to me where you get into, rethinking management positions, not going to attorneys, or you're talking about a collaboration that a lot of law firms don't have.
Yeah.
Right. Is that they actually want to work as a team instead of being siloed and fighting for work. We don't operate like that, which is funny, but that even, that's a big problem, right? That even our firm, who all of us have a commitment to DEI, just personally, we're not about the marketing of it. We're about being authentic and making sure our people feel good about it. But there are just certain things that in the practice of law, you can't get away from, that are just institutionally part of it. And that to me is what needs to be fixed. And that to me means, that would affect our clients. It affects billing. What does success mean? Entire partnership structures, like the whole thing. But it needs to be done because otherwise it's literally a disparate impact. And especially now when, I know when you read that jobs report at the end of last year that only women lost their jobs in December. We have to figure out a way to prevent that.
Yep.
It's just like so much on, especially in a pandemic where like your kids stay home. You're stuck with it. You can't get out of it. I was meant to be a career woman. I love my kids. Never meant to be a stay-at-home mom. I know that about myself. I know my job makes me a better parent. But, at the end of the day, you have to make hard decisions for your family. And sometimes that means leaving work. So.
Yep. I've definitely seen people make that choice. And it's one thing if that's what I think is great. Like we should all have the options. That's the ideal. The ideal isn't this or that. The ideal is everything. And we pick what's best for what we want out of life or what we need to get out of life. So hopefully we will see some acceleration of those changes, but
I'm working on it.
Yes.
I have this conversation a lot. But half the battle is getting it out in the open.
Yep.
And even if I don't have the answer, being able to talk about it with different people from different perspectives, that's how you get things done.
Yep. It takes telling your story or, for somebody to be like, oh, well, I was talking to this person the other day and they said this and I had never looked at it that way. So like, maybe we should look at it in a different way.
Yep. It never hurts to have an outside perspective. Never. Even if it's not the answer you want or you don't use it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. At least it gives you the full picture so you can understand what outcomes might be when making a decision. Even if it's not the direction you go, you at least understand what some of the collateral damage might be.
Right. It's like, I don't know. I liken it to learning from your mistakes because no matter what happens, you learn something out of it and you should.
Yep.
Right. So that you're always getting better or learning or, whatever it is.
Well, that brings us to our last question. Good segue. What advice would you like to share with our audience?
So I found this to be particularly true in the last year. In the fight or flight, right? I'm very much a fight. And so I have found that finding my confidence is sort of the key for me. And what I mean by that is either finding people that give you that confidence. It's probably I'm well into my 30s and I've always struggled with how people make me feel about myself. And finding those people that make you feel good while also challenging you, right? Like, I don't want somebody to tell me things that aren't true.
Mhm.
I need somebody to challenge me, and to find those people that not only push you to do your best, but are there when you're down and are there to cheer you up. I like to call them champions, but find those people. I don't think I've done so well at my job now that I know I know enough about myself and my skill set that I can confidently say I can do these things and I'm good at these things and not feel guilty for saying it. That's kind of the direction I'm going. So my advice is to seek people who are that person for you, or a group of people. We've tag teamed and gone around in circles, and it's really important to find people that do that for you, because I do think we get stuck in these sort of terrible relationships, and it's okay to say no. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you hate that person. It's just, these people make me feel good about myself while also improving me. So that's my big secret this year.
Well, I think those are the best kind of relationships to form. Like, one of my favorite sayings is truth over harmony. And I'm not like a go in guns blazing type person, scorched earth. Like, that's not my personality. That's not your personality. But I'll have the difficult conversation if I need to have the difficult conversation. And I want other people to have, it doesn't even have to be a difficult conversation. Sometimes it just might be like, there's this thing that you've asked me about, and I'm going to be honest with you. And it's not what you want to hear. You're not going to like it, but like, you need to hear it, because to the second part of what you said, I want you to be a better person. And I know you want to be better at X. So here is my feedback. Yes, like, I'd very much rather somebody be honest with me than just blow smoke. And, at the end of the day, I have not grown in any way, shape, or form.
Right. And that's where you need to find those friends that can do that for you, because you do, right? The first time it starts, it's like you get mad, they get mad, and now we're like, but you get over that because you realize where it's coming from, and that you can still push back if you don't think that's right. That's what the whole relationship is about, is that we can do those things with each other and still be friends at the end of the day.
Well, and it's not necessarily about, you're doing this wrong, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. But this is my observation. Go sit with it. Think upon it. You might come back and be like, that's not true at all, or I don't agree with you. And that's fine. Like, we should all do that. And we should be better at, listening to our own instincts on things. But it's about the awareness that you might be missing, because we all have blind spots.
Yeah. And it's, like we've been talking about, it's hard to see because you're one person, you've had one set of experiences. It's just, you're one person in the world, which is scary and overwhelming sometimes, but you have to realize that inviting other people into that and being invited into their lives is just so much more fulfilling. And it just gets you to such a better place when you can. And, this is something I learned in my Smith-Buckland leadership class that I got to go to, is bringing yourself back to neutral. Like, I don't know if this was recorded when I was saying it, but I do get emotional. I with my excitement comes sadness or anger or happiness, extreme happiness. And to be able to look at it from a neutral perspective, like, you can have that moment where it needs to get out and the emotion that it has, but to then be able to look at it from a neutral perspective and understand it in that way really helps you get past things.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of brings everything that you were saying together. Like, it's not actually just like a peer or a friend relationship. Like, that's 100% part of being a leader, and part of being a manager is knowing how to have those conversations with your team. It's about taking a step back and seeing, outside of just your experience to, our point of what does everything look like for everybody else? And do I need to advocate on behalf of myself? Do I need to advocate on behalf of others? Because not everyone is necessarily doing well in the structure that's currently set up. And what changes do we need to make? Like, it all comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you have that tribe of people who are willing to lift you up when you need to be lifted up, but also willing to have the conversations that make you better, which, like I said, is all about leadership. And you've been doing that from day one.
Well, it's been fun. And I don't know, the older you get, that you get to see those things change. And, I think I said it in my first president's letter, like 10 years ago, I would not be having these conversations online, on video. Even though I'm very vocal personally, that would have impacted my job. And to feel like I can also do that here, and as president of, the Midwest chapter or region, for people to allow me to do that and then support me doing that. Mm-hmm. It's really good. It makes me happy, and especially for the future of what legal marketing might be.
Yes, I agree. Well, Laura, it has been a pleasure to have you on. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I really enjoyed our conversation. I think the work you're doing around inclusion and mental health awareness is absolutely amazing. So keep that up, because I think it's really important for our industry as a whole. And join us back here for the next episode of LISI's News, Views, and To-Dos.